If we're going to overcome COVID-19 and we're going to help people along that journey, it's vital that we understand what COVID-19 actually is. You've probably heard a lot about it. It's become a common part of people's discussions every single day. It's a novel virus. But what does that mean for us individually? We've got to recognise this is a global pandemic. This has taken tens of thousands of lives. This has affected hundreds of thousands of people, approaching millions of people. And it will, when it's run its full course, it will have been prolific. Most people will have had an encounter with COVID-19. So what does it do, and why is it so damaging to us? And why does having a whole list of comorbidities put you more at risk? Well, the truth is, or the fact is, no one dies of COVID-19. What we die of are the secondary causes that happen in the wake of the damage that's invoked by COVID-19. So we have to just spend a little bit of time recognizing the mechanism of how it works. So the virus gets onto the lung and it sits on top of the cell. And the first thing the virus does is it sends a message into the cell to replicate itself. And once it's replicated itself sufficient amount of times within the cell, it sends a code that says destruct. And it literally starts to set about destroying cellular tissue around the alveoli. So we're talking about a fundamental architectural change within the lung. Now, unfortunately, in the worst instances, or where people have got comorbidities, things like type 2 diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, certain types of cancers, what we see is a suppressed immune system, and we see an immune system respond in a really poor way, which is similar to autoimmune disease. And what I mean by that is the immune system itself, triggered by COVID-19, starts to attack the cells too, and invokes even more damage. And we also know, because we're learning more as time goes by, is that COVID-19, the virus, attacks the oxygen within the hemoglobin. So what we've got is a systemic change. We are no longer the person we were prior to contracting, becoming infected with COVID-19. That system has been altered, physically altered. The alveoli has been damaged, and other parts of the anatomy have been damaged too. And there can be a second or third wave of a poor immune response in certain individuals. And that's why the latest research tells us that the longer you've had symptoms for, the more damage will have taken place. That's not always the case with things that we pick up, flus, colds, other types of viruses, but it is in this instance. We are pretty sure, pretty much convinced, most of the research tells us the longer you've been symptomatic, the more damage will have taken place. So this is why it's vital for us to get somebody's history and experience. We need to capture that and we need to understand it, because this isn't what we're more used to, which is the notion that someone's just not fit. And what we mean by that normally, which is quite unspecific, is that someone's not really making optimal use of what they've got, their lung capacity, their muscular capacity. More often than not, when we work on fitness, we work the first 6 months on just maximizing the potential somebody has. COVID-19 couldn't be any more different to that. What we need to do is repair that damage. We need to recognize that the individual, no matter how they look on the outside, is going through a healing phase, and that healing phase is going to take time. And also, within this period, there is a ripe window of opportunity for an individual to become reinfected by that COVID again. So we have to approach carefully, and we have to moderate the exercise and the rehabilitation as such that what we do is we underscore what we think a person is capable of in the first instance. And we have to manage their expectations as we do that. Some people will come to you and they'll have a background of exercise, regardless of their comorbidities. We know that a lot of people have already embraced exercise as a means by which to manage certain types of chronic disease and conditions. And they might have expectations that are about being back where they were previously, or have expectations about where they intend to be in overcoming their COVID-19 and those symptoms. And we need to manage that, and we need to set a pace in place right from the start that gives them realistic expectations, and so that they can see success and progress where it actually takes place and not be underwhelmed or disappointed by what they perceive to be a slow rate of progression. So from the start, we need to tell someone that we're going to begin gradually, that we're going to start to literally put in place sufficient amount of daily dose exercise to start to tax this system. It's primarily focused on increasing heart rate gradually, increasing breathing rate gradually, and extending that time on task. So it's vital that we start to measure things in minutes and not kilograms or reps to begin with, because if we don't develop this system first, we don't really have a chance, or there's no point in developing the broader part of the system. So it's essential that that's where we embed ourselves to begin with, and that's going to start on individual needs, determining, finding out where they're at. What do they currently do? How are they coping with that? How long does it take to recover? And all of these need to be insight as to how much damage they've sustained. So if someone has been symptomatic for a week or 2 weeks, then we need to recognize there's been a week or 2 weeks worth of damage to the architecture. If someone's been symptomatic and at worst been into hospital and on ITU, and that could be anywhere up to 3-4 weeks and beyond, then we have to recognize this is someone who's coming from a clinical context and background, and there will be measurable, dramatic measurable changes to their physiological anatomical architecture, primarily around the lungs and with regards to how their blood functions with its oxidative potential. So we have to progress carefully. We have to slow things down. Typically, when we're working with people in exercise and fitness, we're keen to build on success, and we're keen to achieve early doors and see what we can grab as we go along. We have to take a different approach here. We have to consider success to be when we expose someone to a daily dose of physical activity and exercise, and they're not fatigued, they don't feel tired, there's not even close to getting any kind of muscle soreness, that it's well within their capacity to cope from the start. And we need to build this so that we're getting back-to-back exposure, and they can build on a legacy of being able to cope. To begin with, for the first 6 to 8 weeks, it should all be within a tolerance zone that does not leave them unduly fatigued, tired, and not able to conduct their activities of daily life in the wake of the exercise we've prescribed. And it will start what you might consider to be the less exciting things, looking at how we can increase their walking, turning that walk into a walk, jog, walk, turning that into a walk, jog, a little bit of a run. But this will take months of time. But if we take our time and we do it right, and we look for those positive signs and that positive feedback of a person continuing to cope, continuing to find this within their capability, and making small changes every single day, then we're going to lead that person directly towards meaningful success and rehabilitation, and get them beyond that COVID-19 experience that they've endured and suffered with. So let's make no mistakes. The damage that the body sustains having endured COVID-19 is dramatic. It's on a par with when we look at someone who's, been an excessive smoker for a number of years. We are literally talking about quantifiable tissue damage. That's what the virus does. This is why in the wake, acutely within the wake of COVID-19, a person is highly susceptible to developing pleurisy, pneumonia. There's been an instance where it's lent on to cardiovascular issues and cardiovascular arrest, because we are talking about systematic tissue damage. So this isn't just a case of, again, non-optimized tissue. This isn't a case of compromised tissue. This is a case of a virus and an immune system that's kind of got out of control a little bit. It's been let run havoc, and it's caused a lot of damage at a cellular and a tissue level. So what we have to bear in mind is that we're looking to rebuild that tissue. That's what we're doing. We're looking to facilitate recovery. That's not just about feeling better in the wake of it. It's actually putting a person in a position so they can oxygenate, they can increase their cellular turnover positively, so that they can rebuild that tissue anew with healthy new tissue, that they can recover that oxygen potential within the blood and get themselves reset to go again in a far more advanced state of physical physiological well-being than they've been left in the wake of dealing with COVID-19. So all this damage that a person sustained, how is that going to make them feel, and what are you going to encounter? How is that going to be reported to you? Well, the key thing is they're going to feel fatigued, and I mean really fatigued. We're not talking about someone who's a little bit tired and a little bit under par. Simple tasks are going to wipe people out. Simple things like climbing the stairs at home can turn into what it's like climbing a mountain. You know, literally going to the shop and back can seem like a gargantuan effort. And we need to go back to thinking, well, why might that be? Well, given the fact that they're compromised at a cellular level within the lung and the oxygen potential of the blood, this is compromising the periphery and the muscles. So what we're getting, I mean, fatigue is complex. There are multiple factors to fatigue. There are psychological factors, physiological, neurological. There are multiple factors to fatigue. But what we've got here is a fundamental compromise to how we can oxygenate tissue. Okay, and along with that, there will be some loss of neurological stimulus. So a person is dealing with debilitating levels of fatigue, and that's what they will report to you with. That's going to be the single biggest limitation in their life. So for someone who has a past experience of exercise, this is going to be difficult enough, and they might have some ideas of what exercises they need to do in order to start approaching this and tackling it and improving the situation. But this goes back to how we manage expectations, because the concern with those people is they attempt to do too much too soon. And that's not only going to make a bad situation worse, but that could actually lead potentially to a second or third wave of a reinfection of their own virus, unless we know they are completely free of it. And we're still learning about COVID-19. It's a novel virus, so as yet we don't know, and we shouldn't pretend that we do. But for someone, and this will largely make up the majority of people who will seek support at this stage, they probably don't have that background in exercise and experience of it and familiarity with it, and certainly not really know how to do it. And that is where you come into your own. This is where your expertise counts. This is where you need to win hearts and minds and be able to guide these people successfully towards meaningful and beneficial outcomes, teaching them the right way from the start. Not only managing expectations, but informing them and teaching them about what expectations are right in the first place. Getting involved and teaching them how to do things well from the beginning, so there's no bad habits. This is someone who really you should be looking at as a lifetime client, a lifetime person whose journey you're going to support, guide and direct, because they're going to need help for a long time. The initial phase is just overcoming the virus. Beyond that is the new version that you've helped to create, and it's facilitating their continuing lifestyle change, doing things better, making themselves less at risk were something like this to happen again. That's really what this is about. That's really the overall target, is not just to fix this problem, but it's to help these people to fix the problem they've had and prevent it from happening again in the future. What we have to recognize is COVID-19 is with us for the long term, and we are finding out new things every day and every week. We've got to keep up to date. We've got to see how it evolves over the long term as a virus, the impact over the long term, and we have to be sensitive to that change. It's our task as a community and as a profession to come together and fulfill our duty of care on this. With regards to enhancing somebody's health and therefore improving their quality of life and reducing their amount of risk, that's exactly what our industry is about. This is the start of addressing COVID-19. This is the start of helping people to rebuild, to recover, and get on a better track. But we have to remain alert and sensitive to the new information that comes through. We will keep this program up to date. We will make sure that it's continually informed by the latest evidence and the best evidence, so that we can continue to engage in this meaningfully and deflect what we find out as we find out about it, to position you better to deal with those people who've suffered COVID-19, and so that we can improve the health of a nation around it. That's what this program is about. Welcome to Rebuild.